Rebecca Mitchell, a successful Seattle interior designer, discovers her husband Daniel's betrayal on their 15th anniversary. A security alert reveals Daniel with his secretary, Vanessa, in their condo, unraveling a web of infidelity and financial deceit. As Rebecca uncovers hidden properties and diverted funds, she builds a case with her lawyer, Nick, and forensic accountant, Justin. The plot thickens with Daniel's secret plans for a new life with Vanessa, including a house built from Rebecca's designs. As she strategizes to reclaim her life, the looming confrontation promises more shocking revelations. What will Rebecca uncover next? If Rebecca's gripping journey resonates with you, join our community. Subscribe for more compelling stories and exclusive updates. Your support fuels our storytelling passion. Drop a comment about where you're tuning in from and don't miss tomorrow's special reveal. Click that subscribe button now. The words slipped from my lips, laced with a bitter edge. Happy 15th anniversary. My gaze was locked on my phone where the grainy feed from our condo's security camera played out a scene that twisted my stomach. There was Daniel, my husband of 15 years, stepping into the elevator of our sleek downtown Seattle condo, his arm wrapped possessively around Vanessa, his secretary. Her red lipstick was smeared across his crisp white collar, a garish mark of betrayal. The timestamp glowed accusingly. 7:42 p.m., just 2 hours after Daniel's text claiming an emergency client meeting would keep him late at the office on our anniversary. My heart thudded dully as I stared, the truth sinking in like cold water, seeping through cracks. I hadn't meant to spy. The only reason I'd opened the feed was a routine alert from our security company about after-hours motion detection. Now, the reason for our canceled anniversary dinner at Canlis, the restaurant where we'd shared our first date, was painfully clear. So was Daniel's suggestion to celebrate this weekend instead, delivered with that polished, practiced smile, the same one that had charmed clients for years and, once upon a time, had captivated me. I'm Rebecca Mitchell, though my friends call me Becca. At 42, I'd carved out a name for myself in Seattle's competitive design world, transforming Emerald Interiors from a solo venture into the go-to firm for tech moguls and real estate tycoons. My days were filled with high-stakes projects, from sleek corporate offices to sprawling waterfront estates, each one a testament to my relentless drive and creative vision. I'd met Daniel in the early days, back when I was designing the modest office for his fledgling financial consulting firm. He was a numbers genius, magnetic in a way that drew people to him effortlessly, with a work ethic that mirrored my own. Our romance had been a whirlwind, late-night talks about our ambitions, spontaneous weekend escapes to the San Juan Islands, and a shared dream of building something enduring, both in business and in love. We'd married after just 18 months, blending our lives and goals with an ease that felt fated. For years, everything clicked. I poured my heart into designing our breathtaking Lake Washington home, a 6,000 square foot sanctuary of custom details and serene elegance, while Daniel grew Mitchell & Taylor Consulting into a powerhouse in Seattle's financial scene. We jetted off to Paris and Tokyo, collected bold contemporary art, and threw lavish dinner parties for the city's elite. To the world, we were the epitome of success, a glamorous, driven power couple, living a life others envied. But beneath the polished surface, cracks had begun to form, subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. The first shadow fell 3 years ago when Daniel hired Vanessa Porter as his executive assistant. At 32, she was a decade younger than me, armed with a Stanford MBA and a self-assuredness that teetered on arrogance. I'd noticed her at company events, her gaze lingering on Daniel with an intensity that went beyond professional admiration. Her eyes tracked him across crowded rooms, bright with something I couldn't quite name. I'd brushed it off as ambition, telling myself it was natural to admire a man like Daniel, charismatic, successful, a titan in Seattle's business circles. "She's driven," Daniel had said when I mentioned her demeanor, his tone casual. "Reminds me of you when we were starting out." The comparison should have flattered me, but instead, it left a sour taste, a quiet unease I couldn't shake. Still, I trusted him. I trusted us. My own business was booming, with major downtown renovation contracts and a sustainable design initiative earning national praise. So I pushed the doubts aside and focused on my work. The pandemic hit us hard, slowing both our businesses, but as the world reopened, we roared back stronger. Daniel's firm thrived, and with that came more travel. San Francisco, New York, Chicago, always with Vanessa in tow to manage logistics. Their trips often spilled into weekends, labeled as client development, leaving me to navigate charity galas and friend gatherings solo. "It's just how business works now," Daniel would say, pressing a kiss to my forehead as he packed his sleek carry-on. "Everyone's playing catch-up post-COVID." I'd nod, swallowing the hollow ache in my chest, convincing myself this was the cost of our success, the natural rhythm of a high-powered marriage. My best friend Stephanie wasn't so easily placated. Over coffee at Rainy Day Cafe, she'd leaned forward, her eyes searching mine. "Becca, you're carrying all this alone. Don't you ever wonder what's keeping him away?" I'd bristled, defensive. "You don't get it, Steph. The financial world's cutthroat right now. He's under insane pressure." She'd given me that look, knowing, almost pitying, and said softly, "Just don't forget who you are. You built something incredible without leaning on anyone. Hold on to that." Her words stung, but I deflected, steering the conversation elsewhere. Deep down, though, her concern planted a seed of doubt that grew as our 15th anniversary loomed. Daniel's absence became more than physical. Even when he was home, he was distant, his attention glued to his phone or sequestered in his office on endless video calls. The spark that had once defined us, passionate debates, stolen kisses, nights tangled in each other, had faded to perfunctory pecks and rare, distracted intimacy. 3 weeks before our anniversary, I'd tried to bridge the gap. "Let's make it special this year," I'd said, my voice bright with hope. 15 years is worth celebrating." He'd glanced up from his phone, nodding. "Absolutely, babe. Book whatever you want. Just loop in Vanessa to clear my schedule." The mention of her name grated, but I swallowed my irritation and reserved a table at Canley's, a nostalgic nod to our early days. I emailed Vanessa the details, and her reply was crisp, professional. "Evening secured. Looking forward to celebrating you both." As the date approached, I let myself believe we could reclaim what we'd lost. I bought a slinky new dress, booked a salon appointment, and poured my heart into a handwritten card, dreaming of our next 15 years. That morning, Daniel kissed me goodbye, his voice warm with promise. "Can't wait for tonight." I spent the day in meetings, then primped here at home, my anticipation building. But at 5:30 p.m., as I smoothed on lipstick, my phone pinged with a text. "Emergency with Watson account. Can't make dinner. We'll make it up this weekend. Order in. Relax. Love you." The disappointment was a physical ache, but not unfamiliar. This wasn't the first time work had trumped our plans. I canceled the reservation, traded my dress for sweats, and poured a glass of Pinot Noir, trying to numb the sting. It was during my second glass that the security alert flashed on my phone. Curious, I opened the feed, and the world tilted. There, in stark clarity, was Daniel, Vanessa clinging to him in the elevator, her giggles echoing as he pressed her against the wall. The Watson account emergency was a lie, as vivid as her black cocktail dress and the lipstick staining his shirt. They stumbled out of view into our downtown pied-à-terre, a condo we kept for late nights or out-of-town clients. We'd agreed on no interior cameras for privacy, so the feed cut off, but I didn't need more. The betrayal wasn't a shock, not really. It was the final piece of a puzzle I'd been avoiding for years. I set my phone down, my hands steady despite the storm inside. Slowly, I walked through our Lake Washington home, my bare feet sinking into the plush rugs I'd chosen, my fingers trailing over the handcrafted dining table where we'd hosted countless toasts. The living room, with its cozy sectional, held memories of rainy nights curled up with movies. The primary bedroom, with its floor-to-ceiling windows framing the lake, had once been our haven. Now it all felt like a stage set for a play that had ended. This house, every inch a labor of love, was a monument to a shared dream now exposed as a hollow charade. In our home office, I sat at my desk, the glow of my laptop casting sharp shadows. With a calm born of necessity, I logged into our shared cloud drive where we stored everything: deeds, policies, financials. My eyes snagged on a folder labeled Shoreline Development. It wasn't a project I knew, odd since I oversaw our real estate investments. Inside were documents for a waterfront property in the San Juan Island. Not our vacation cabin, but a new purchase made 8 months ago, with Daniel as the sole owner. The price was staggering, even for Seattle's market. Worse were the emails between Daniel and Vanessa, planning renovations, furnishings, a life together. Our perfect getaway, Daniel had written. Can't wait to wake up next to you with that view. My breath caught, the room spinning. This wasn't just an affair. It was a calculated plan, a future they'd built behind my back. I dug deeper, my fingers flying over the keyboard, capturing screenshots. A pattern emerged, 2 years of financial deception. Daniel had siphoned funds from our joint investments into hidden accounts, formed an LLC with Vanessa as a partner, and bought not just the island property, but a luxury condo in Phoenix. Their fresh start, per their emails. Most crushing was a draft separation agreement prepared by an unfamiliar law firm. Its terms were ruthless. Daniel would keep the lion's share of our assets, claiming he had earned them, while I'd get the Lake Washington house, its hefty mortgage, and a settlement that was a fraction of our wealth. Dated 3 months ago, it included notes on timing the divorce to minimize my claims. They'd planned to ambush me, but only after Daniel had fortified his position. I called Stephanie, my voice eerily calm. Despite the hour, she answered instantly. "Becca, you okay?" "No," I said, "but I will be. Can you come over and bring Justin?" She didn't hesitate. 30 minutes. Next, I dialed Nick Rodriguez, a lawyer and friend who had handled my business contracts. "I need help with an emergency," I told him. "Possible fraud and a divorce." His response was swift. "Text me your address. I'm there in an hour." While I waited, I kept searching, uncovering more. Daniel had taken a line of credit against our house without my knowledge, borrowed from my firm with signatures I didn't recall signing. By the time Stephanie and her brother Justin, a forensic accountant, arrived, I'd compiled a damning digital dossier. Justin scanned it, whistling. He's been at this for years, classic asset dissipation, but he's sloppy, leaving this trail. Amateur. He never thought I'd check, I said. He handled the money. I built my business. Stephanie squeezed my hand. "You've got him, Becca. Dead to rights." Nick arrived, his presence steadying. After reviewing the evidence, he met my gaze. "You have leverage, Rebecca. What do you want?" I paused, the betrayal still raw but my mind clear. Fairness, protection for what I've built, and for Daniel to see I'm not the naive wife he thinks. Nick nodded. "Then we move fast. Secure assets before confrontation. He'll escalate once he knows you're onto him." Justin was already working, time-stamping documents, tracing funds. Stephanie, ever practical, asked, "What about tonight? He's with her in the condo. Confront him?" I shook my head, a strategy forming. "Not yet. He thinks I'm home, sulking over our ruined anniversary. Let's use that." Nick's eyes gleamed. "Surprise is your weapon. What's the play?" I reached for my phone. Time to change the locks on every property. The next morning, I walked into my design studio, my posture radiating resolve. My assistant, Maya, noticed. "You okay, Becca?" "I will be at this then," I said. Maya. My voice firm. "Clear my calendar. We've got some fires to put out." I met with Linda Green, Daniel's former assistant, who'd left soon after Vanessa's arrival. Over coffee, she confirmed my fears. "Vanessa sabotaged me," she said, her anger fresh. "Created errors, made me look incompetent. When I flagged it, Dan brushed me off, said I was threatened by youth." I asked, "Did you suspect them?" Her bitter laugh answered. 3 years ago, at the Seattle Art Museum Gala, I saw them in the sculpture garden. It wasn't work talk. 3 years. The timeline burned, my marriage eroding while I'd been blind. Back at my desk, I got the word the locks were changed on our house, cabin, and Portland properties. I left the condo and the secret San Juan property for later. Phase 2. Daniel texted at 11:30 a.m. Crashed at Eric's after late meeting. Heading to Portland for Rainier Tech consult. Back tomorrow. Sorry about last night. Weekend's ours. The Portland lie was telling, likely a day with Vanessa. I replied coolly, "No worries. Swamped with Mercer Island project. Safe travels." I forwarded the text to Nick, who responded, "Perfect. Meet at my office, 3 p.m. with financial team." At Rodriguez and Associates, Justin presented his overnight findings. Daniel had diverted $12 billion, some to offshore accounts still being traced. Washington's community property laws are on your side, Nick said. But his transactions are a mess to untangle. The scale of it, $12 billion, hidden while we shared Sunday coffee, planned trips, left me breathless. Yet, I knew I had to keep going. I wasn't going to let Daniel get away with this level of betrayal. For years, Justin had been meticulously tracking the subtle financial discrepancies, small amounts siphoned off consistently, like a slow drip eroding trust. But in the past 6 months, the pace had quickened, a frantic urgency suggesting a looming deadline. His brow furrowed as he shared this with the group, his voice heavy with the weight of uncovering a betrayal he'd long suspected but hoped wasn't true. It's not just the money, he said, his fingers tapping nervously on the table. The San Juan property purchase screams base of operations. He's setting up a new life. Nick, ever the pragmatist, leaned forward, his sharp eyes glinting with focus. And the Phoenix condo? That's not just an investment, it's a relocation strategy. My gut tells me Daniel's planning to vanish within months, probably after locking in a major client. One Eric and Walter know nothing about. The words hit Rebecca like a cold wave, each syllable confirming the unraveling of the life she'd built. The pieces were aligning, each one a shard of the truth she'd been too trusting to see. Daniel's frequent trips, cloaked in vague mentions of new market opportunities, his offhand suggestions that she consider opening an Emerald Interiors branch in Phoenix, they weren't casual. They were calculated, a trail of breadcrumbs leading to his escape. Rebecca's heart raced as she looked around the table at her makeshift crisis team, a mix of resolve and dread anchoring her to the moment. "What's our next step?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside. Nick leaned back, his legal mind already spinning. "We've filed emergency temporary restraining orders to freeze the accounts we've identified. That was this morning's priority. Now we need concrete evidence of the affair to bolster the dissipation claims." His words were clinical, but Rebecca could see the empathy in his eyes, the unspoken acknowledgement of how personal this was for her. Stephanie, who had been quietly scribbling notes, her pen a lifeline to order in the chaos, looked up. "What about Vanessa's friend Megan? She's never hidden her dislike for how Vanessa talks about you, Becca. She might be willing to spill." The suggestion sparked a flicker of hope in Rebecca, though it was tinged with unease. Megan Walsh had always been polite but distant at company events, her cool demeanor something Rebecca had chalked up to shyness. Now she wondered if Megan's reserve hid a deeper discomfort, a quiet judgment of the betrayal unfolding in plain sight. "I'll reach out to her," Rebecca agreed, her voice firm but cautious. "But we have to be discreet. If Daniel catches even a whiff of this, he'll cover his tracks faster than we can move." Her mind churned with the weight of secrecy, the need to outmaneuver the man she'd loved for 15 years. As the meeting stretched on, they crafted a plan with surgical precision. Justin would dig deeper into the financial trail, chasing every transaction to its source. Nick would prepare divorce filings to counter the draft Rebecca had stumbled upon, a document that had felt like a knife to the gut when she found it hidden in Daniel's files. Stephanie would help catalog the contents of their properties and secure Emerald Interiors records against any sabotage Daniel might attempt. By 7 p.m., Rebecca was drained, her body heavy with exhaustion, but her resolve unyielding. She drove back to the Lake Washington house, the place she'd once poured her heart into designing as a sanctuary. Now it felt like a stage for a tragedy she hadn't scripted. The new security system scanned her biometrics, granting entry with a cold efficiency that matched her mood. The house was no longer a home. It was a crime scene, each room a testament to the calculated murder of her marriage. She wandered through the spaces she'd crafted with love, her designer's eye now seeing only deception. In Daniel's office, behind his prized Princeton diploma, she discovered a wall safe she'd never known existed. Her fingers trembled as she entered their wedding date as the combination, a cruel irony that it still worked. Inside were documents her digital searches had missed, ownership certificates for artwork or bought through a Vancouver dealer, insurance policies for jewelry she'd never laid eyes on, and most gut-wrenching, a recent appraisal for the engagement ring she still wore. The realization hit her like a physical blow. He was planning to ask for it back, to erase her from his life as if she were a temporary fixture. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from the spiral of hurt. A text from Daniel. Portland meetings running long, staying overnight. Don't wait up. Tomorrow we'll be late getting in. The words were casual, but they burned. She typed a reply, her fingers steady despite the bitter taste of the lie. Hope it goes well. House feels empty without you. Strategic, she told herself. She had to maintain the facade, keep him unsuspecting while they built their case. Daniel had played the long game for years. She could manage a few days. That night, she couldn't face the master bedroom. The bed they'd shared for a decade and a half, now tainted. She chose the guest room, its unfamiliarity a small comfort. As she drifted into a restless sleep, Nick's earlier question echoed in her mind. Are you sure you want to do this, Rebecca? Once we move forward, there's no going back, no possibility of reconciliation. Her response had been resolute, born of a clarity she hadn't expected. There's already no going back, Nick. Daniel made that decision 3 years ago. He just didn't have the courage to tell me. Well, in the darkness, she allowed herself a fleeting moment of grief for the marriage she'd believed in, the partner she'd trusted, the future they'd planned. Then she wiped her tears, opened her laptop, and got to work. Morning brought confirmation that the restraining orders had been granted. Daniel's secret accounts were frozen. Property transfers halted pending investigation. Nick had also secured orders to prevent changes to their insurance policies and investment portfolios, a move that wouldn't stop Daniel entirely, but would throw a wrench into his plans. At 10:00 a.m., Rebecca met Megan Walsh at a quiet Ballard cafe, far from Daniel's usual circles. Megan arrived, her hands fidgeting around her coffee cup, her eyes darting nervously. I've wanted to talk to you for over a year, she confessed, her voice low but firm. But Vanessa made it clear my career would be over if I said anything. Rebecca's stomach churned, but she nodded, encouraging Megan to continue. The story poured out, each detail a fresh wound. Vanessa had pursued Daniel from her first day at the company, positioning herself as his indispensable ally. Their affair began 3 years ago on a Chicago business trip, a betrayal that had grown unchecked. Worse were Vanessa's brazen words about Rebecca. She calls you the placeholder, Megan said, unable to meet Rebecca's gaze. Says you served your purpose building Daniel's reputation, but you're not the right partner for the next phase. She's got their whole future planned in Phoenix, away from Seattle's small-minded business scene. When? Rebecca asked, her voice tight with controlled anger. Megan hesitated, then pulled up a text from Vanessa, dated 2 weeks ago. Countdown begins. 75 days until freedom. Dee finalized the client contract today. Once it closes next month, we're golden. Rebecca's breath caught. She forwarded the screenshot to Nick, her mind racing. Daniel's secretive negotiations for a major contract now made sense. He was planning his exit, and this deal was his ticket. Is there anything else? Rebecca asked, her tone gentle but urgent. Megan's voice dropped to a whisper. They've been using your downtown condo for their meetings for over 2 years. Vanessa has her own key. The revelation explained the security alert Rebecca had noticed. Vanessa's key, Daniel's elevator code. She thanked Megan, her gratitude genuine despite the pain, and returned to her office where Stephanie was waiting. Sharing Megan's story, Rebecca watched Stephanie's shock turn to fury. 75 days, Stephanie muttered, right after the Thompson Group merger closes. He's setting himself up to walk away with major clients. The merger, Walter Thompson's financial services firm joining forces with Mitchell and Taylor Consulting, was set to skyrocket the company's valuation, and Daniel stood to gain millions he clearly had no intention of sharing. We need to move faster, Rebecca decided, dialing Nick. Daniel's back tomorrow. We need to be ready. The day blurred with activity. Justin traced most of the missing funds, building a damning case of financial misconduct. Nick finalized the legal filings, poised to strike. Stephanie helped secure valuables and documents, moving them to a safe location. By evening, Rebecca was exhausted but driven by a fierce determination. With a private security firm's help, she changed the locks and codes on the downtown condo and installed hidden cameras. If Daniel and Vanessa returned, they'd be caught on tape. That night, Rebecca prepared for Daniel's return, staging the master bedroom to look untouched, placing fresh flowers in the entryway, and stocking the kitchen with his favorite breakfast foods. To the outside world, she was the devoted wife awaiting her husband. But in the fifth bedroom, her suitcases were packed, her evidence secured off-site, her team on standby. At 6:42 a.m., Daniel's key turned in the lock. Rebecca stayed in bed, eyes closed, listening to the familiar rhythm of his routine. Briefcase on the floor, shoes on the rack, the soft creak of the kitchen floorboards. Once, these sounds had been her anchor. Now they were props in a performance. She counted to 300, then rose, slipping into her robe and descending with practiced ease. Daniel stood at the kitchen island, scrolling through emails, pristine in his charcoal suit. No trace of the late-night Portland emergency. "You're home," she said, warmth in her voice, despite the coldness in her chest. "How was Portland?" His smile was automatic, polished. "Exhausting. The Rainier Tech situation is a mess, but I think we've got it stabilized." He crossed to kiss her cheek, and she fought the urge to flinch. "Sorry about our anniversary. Maybe we could fly to Napa this weekend, make up for it." She smiled, accepting his coffee. "That sounds lovely, but I thought you had that strategy session with Walter on Saturday." A flicker of irritation crossed his face, quickly masked. "Right, forgot about that. Maybe the next weekend." She nodded, playing the accommodating wife. "Whatever works. I know the Thompson merger's keeping you busy." His eyes narrowed slightly. She rarely asked about his deals, and the deviation sparked caution. "How much do you know about the merger?" he asked, his tone neutral but probing. She shrugged, pouring more coffee. "Just what you've said. Walter's firm brings clients. Yours brings expertise. Should be a big boost." He relaxed, suspicion fading, and pivoted to her work, a safe topic to deflect scrutiny. She played along, discussing her Mercer Island project while studying him. He was flawless in his role as the attentive husband, but now she saw the cracks, the calculated charm, the ease of his lies. When he left for an early executive meeting, she walked him to the door, promising his favorite risotto for dinner. As the door closed, she exhaled, texting Stephanie, "Eagle has landed, proceeding with phase 2. Within 30 minutes, Stephanie arrived with Justin and his team, who began cataloging the Lake Washington house. Rebecca and Stephanie drove to meet Heather Wilson, their real estate agent. Heather's warmth faltered when Rebecca requested records of all properties Daniel had purchased in the last 5 years. Sliding over a power of attorney Daniel had never revoked, Rebecca held her breath. Heather reviewed it, then nodded. "Give me a few minutes." As they waited, Stephanie squeezed her hand. "You're holding up, Becca, okay?" Rebecca nodded, surprised by her own calm. "I keep waiting to fall apart, but I'm just focused, angry." Heather returned with a thick folder, her expression apologetic. "There are properties here purchased without your knowledge, funded from accounts I was told were joint." Rebecca's voice was steady. "I know. That's why I'm here." They uncovered 3 additional properties: a Whistler ski cabin, a San Francisco apartment, and a Chicago brownstone bought 3 months ago through an LLC named Porter Ventures. Vanessa's surname, a bold taunt. Rebecca requested copies and a viewing of the San Juan property, her mind already planning the next move. By noon, she and Stephanie were on the ferry to San Juan Island, documents in hand. Updates poured in. Justin's inventory was progressing, Nick's filings were ready, and the condo's cameras had caught Daniel and Vanessa at 11:15 a.m., their intimacy captured in stark detail. "The Portland emergency," Stephanie scoffed as they watched the footage. Rebecca forwarded it to Nick, her resolve hardening. The ferry ride revealed a pattern of escalating deception in the property records. Early purchases were careless, later ones shrouded in LLCs and offshore accounts. "He got bolder when I didn't question him," Rebecca said, her voice heavy with regret. "I trusted him." Stephanie's response was sharp. "Same playbook my mom fell for. Different generation, same betrayal." At San Juan, they toured the cliffside property, its beauty a cruel contrast to the ugliness it represented. Rebecca stood on the deck, the ocean wind sharp against her skin, and felt a shift. The grief was still there, but so was her strength. She wasn't just fighting for her past, she was reclaiming her future. As the car wound its way up the serpentine driveway, The house emerged from the landscape like a vision pulled straight from a dream. Its towering glass windows caught the sunlight, reflecting the endless expanse of the Harrow Strait, while the warm cedar siding blended seamlessly with the surrounding pines. Decks spilled down toward the water in a cascade of elegant tiers, each level an invitation to linger and lose oneself in the view. The sight stole my breath, not just for its beauty, but for the sharp pang of recognition it stirred deep within me. This was no stranger's home. It was mine, or at least it was supposed to be. Stephanie, sitting beside me, let out a gasp, her voice trembling with disbelief. "Becca, this is your design," she said, her eyes wide as they traced the familiar lines of the architecture. "Every detail, the windows, the way the decks flow, the way it sits against the water. This is the retirement home you dreamed up." Her words hit like a wave, pulling me under. She was right. 3 years ago, I'd poured my heart into sketches for the home Daniel and I would one day share, a sanctuary for when we finally stepped away from the relentless grind of our businesses. I'd shown him those plans, my vision for our future, and he'd been all in, his eyes lighting up as he suggested we start scouting waterfront properties when the time was right. That memory, once warm and full of promise, now twisted like a knife. Because here it stood, my dream made real, but not for us, for him, for Vanessa. The caretaker, Roy, a wiry man with a face carved by years of island winds, greeted us with an easy smile. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said, tipping his cap. "Heather mentioned you'd be stopping by. Mr. Mitchell was just here last weekend, making sure everything was set for the summer." His words landed like a blow, though I kept my face composed, a mask of calm I'd perfected over years of navigating Daniel's half-truths. "Yes, my husband is nothing if not thorough," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside. "Could you show us around? I'd love to see how the house has come together since my last visit." Roy's brow furrowed for a split second. He'd clearly never met me before, but he recovered with a nod. "Of course, ma'am. Let's take a look." Stepping inside was like walking into a mirror of my own soul, and it hurt more than I could have imagined. Every inch of the house screamed me, my taste, my vision, my years of curating beauty. The reclaimed wood beams stretching across the vaulted ceiling, the custom stonework in the kitchen that glowed under soft lighting, the furniture that echoed pieces I'd clipped from design magazines and tucked into my portfolios. It was all here, but elevated, polished to a level of luxury I'd only dreamed of. In the primary bedroom, a massive emperor bed faced floor-to-ceiling windows, perfectly positioned to drink in both the sunrise and sunset over the strait, just as I'd drawn in my sketches. I stood there, frozen, my heart a tangle of awe and betrayal. This was my creation, but I was a stranger in it. Roy, oblivious to the storm inside me, gestured toward the custom closet system, its shelves meticulously organized. "Mr. Mitchell said the lady of the house has impeccable taste," when he remarked, pride in his voice. "Said every detail had to be perfect." The words cut deeper than I expected. Vanessa, he meant Vanessa. I forced a tight smile, my lips trembling with the effort. "Did he mention when they plan to use the house next?" I asked, my tone light but my chest tight. Roy nodded, eager to be helpful. "Matter of fact, he did. Said they'd be here for a long weekend starting tomorrow. Asked me to stock the kitchen and get the hot tub serviced." Tomorrow, the word echoed in my mind, cold and heavy. Just that morning, Daniel had called, his voice warm and familiar, suggesting we plan a weekend in Napa for our anniversary. No mention of San Juan, no hint of this house, no whisper of Vanessa. The realization settled like ice in my veins. Napa was a diversion, a lie to keep me distracted while he and Vanessa celebrated their own anniversary in the home I designed. My dream, their future. We thanked Roy and returned to the car, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. As soon as we were out of earshot, Stephanie whirled on me, her face a mix of fury and heartache. "That absolute bastard," she hissed, her voice shaking. "Becca, he stole your designs. He built your dream house for his mistress." I stared back at the house, its windows glinting in the afternoon sun like a taunt. "Not his mistress," I corrected, my voice barely above a whisper. "His future. This isn't just a fling, Steph. This is the foundation of the life he's building without me." The truth crystallized in that moment, sharp and unyielding. I'd been clinging to the idea that Daniel's affair was a fleeting lapse, a midlife crisis that would burn out. But this house, this monument to my creativity, now a stage for his new life, made it undeniable. This wasn't an emotional betrayal. It was a calculated, years-long plan to replace me, to erase me, my designs, my dreams, my future, all repurposed for Vanessa. The weight of it threatened to crush me. But beneath the hurt, something else stirred. A spark of resolve. I pulled out my phone. "I need to make a call," I said, my voice steady now, fueled by a clarity I hadn't felt in months. Nick, my lawyer, picked up on the first ring. "Rebecca, I was just about to call. We've reviewed the condo footage. It's definitive, clear evidence of the affair. We're ready to file whenever you say." I didn't hesitate. "File today," I said, the decision locking into place like a door slamming shut. "And Nick, I need something else. I need to own this house." There was a pause, the kind that told me he was weighing the complexity of my request. The San Juan property? That's tricky, given how he structured the purchase. My grip tightened on the phone. "I don't care how tricky it is. This house was built from my designs, my creative work. I want it secured before Daniel and Vanessa show up for their romantic weekend tomorrow." Nick's voice shifted, the strategist in him taking over. "Let me talk to the judge who issued the restraining orders. With the evidence of financial misconduct and your designs as intellectual property, we might be able to get an emergency injunction to block their use of the property until the assets are divided." "Perfect," I said, a plan forming in my mind. "And Nick, I want to be here when they arrive." His tone turned cautious. "Rebecca, confronting them directly could complicate things legally." I shook my head, though he couldn't see it. "Not a confrontation, a presence. They need to know I'm not the passive wife they've taken me for." After hanging up, I turned to Stephanie. "Change of plans. We're staying on the island tonight." Her eyes widened, but she didn't question me. "The inn in Friday Harbor, or should I check for an Airbnb closer?" "Neither," I said, starting the car. "We're staying right here in the house." Stephanie's jaw dropped. "Is that even legal?" I smiled, a grim determination settling over me. "As of an hour from now, this property will be under dispute with an injunction preventing either party from claiming exclusive access. That means I have as much right to be here as Daniel does." We drove into town to gather supplies, groceries, wine, a few overnight essentials. While Stephanie shopped, I called Justin, my investigator, for an update. "The Lake Washington house inventory is done," he reported. "We've documented everything, including the wall safe. The team's now digging into financial records. There's a significant discrepancy between the tax returns you provided and what was actually filed." My stomach churned, though I wasn't surprised. "Tax fraud? Potentially," Justin said. "We found business expenses claimed on your joint returns that were actually personal. Vacation travel disguised as business trips, furnishings for the Chicago brownstone listed as office equipment." The scope of Daniel's deception kept growing, a web of lies that stretched further with every discovery. I told Justin about our plan to stay at the San Juan house and arranged for one of his associates to join us with documentation equipment. If I was staking a claim, I needed every detail of the house recorded. By the time we returned, Nick called with good news. The emergency injunction was granted. The house was off limits to Daniel and Vanessa pending a court review. A process server was already en route to Daniel's office with the legal notices. "Perfect timing," I said, unloading groceries. "He'll get the papers just as he's packing for his romantic getaway." Settling into the house felt surreal, like stepping into a parallel life. I wandered through rooms I'd envisioned but never touched, surrounded by furniture I'd conceptualized but never chosen. In the primary bedroom, I opened the closet to find women's clothing. Size 4, designer labels and jewel tones that would flatter Vanessa's complexion. The adjoining bathroom held her skincare products, arranged with obsessive precision. She was already moving in, claiming the life Daniel had promised her. I photographed everything, sending the images to Nick as evidence, then packed Vanessa's belongings into suitcases we found in the guest room. With Stephanie's help, I moved them to the garage, next to Daniel's golf clubs and a pair of high-end mountain bikes. "What now?" Stephanie asked as we ate a simple dinner on the deck, the sunset painting the strait in hues of orange and pink. I sip my wine, a strange calm settling over me. Now we wait. Daniel's gotten the legal notices by now. He's probably scrambling, calling his lawyer, maybe even warning Vanessa. Stephanie frowned. Won't he just call you? I shook my head. Not yet. He'll want to control the narrative, figure out how much I know before he faces me. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Nick. Legal notices delivered to Daniel Mitchell at 5:42 p.m. He appeared visibly shaken, but did not comment. His assistant confirmed he canceled all remaining meetings and left the office immediately. I forwarded the message to Stephanie. And so it begins, I said. Sure enough, 15 minutes later, my phone lit up with Daniel's face. I declined the call. He tried again. I declined again. A text followed. Becca, we need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding. Please call me. I ignored it. 5 minutes later, another. Whatever you think is happening, it's not what it seems. I can explain everything. Please answer your phone. The desperation in his words sparked a grim satisfaction. For the first time, Daniel was tasting the disorientation I'd felt that morning, when I realized our marriage, our life, was a carefully constructed lie. Stephanie glanced at my phone as it buzzed again. Aren't you going to respond? Not tonight, I said, my voice calm but resolute. Tonight is about taking back control, physically, emotionally. Daniel's been writing the story of our marriage for years. Now it's my turn. We spent the evening exploring the house, each room revealing another piece of my vision brought to life. The reading nook tucked under a window, designed to catch the morning light. The office with bookshelves sized perfectly for Daniel's financial history collection. The kitchen, laid out for the kind of entertaining we'd always loved. You know what's strange? I said, sitting by the fire in the great room. Despite everything, I still love this house. It's exactly what I would have built for us. Stephanie leaned forward, her eyes fierce. Then maybe it should be yours, not as a reminder of his betrayal, but as a reclamation of your vision. Her words struck a chord. This house, born from my creativity but tainted by deceit, could be transformed. Not the retirement home I'd planned with Daniel, but something new, a sanctuary for myself, or perhaps a retreat for women rebuilding their lives after betrayal. As midnight approached, Stephanie asleep in the guest room, I stood on the deck, watching moonlight dance across the water. My phone had gone quiet, Daniel's frantic calls and texts finally stopping. Then a single message from an unknown number. This is Vanessa. We need to talk before this goes any further. There are things you don't understand. I stared at the words, recognizing the manipulation for what it was. Things you don't understand was a classic tactic, implying I was missing some key piece that would justify their actions. As if anything could excuse 3 years of calculated deception. I didn't respond. Instead, I sent a quick update to Nick. Vanessa has made contact, proceeding as planned. In the moonlight, a small boat crossed the strait, its light steady as it followed its course. For years, I'd been like that boat, moving along a path I thought was mutual, unaware Daniel had redrawn the map. No more. From now on, I'd chart my own course. Morning brought a flurry of activity. Justin's associate arrived to document the house's contents, while Nick called with updates. The judge is particularly interested in the evidence that your designs were used without attribution or compensation, he said. It strengthens our intellectual property claims in the divorce settlement. My phone buzzed with more messages from Daniel, his tone growing increasingly desperate. Becca, please give me a chance to explain. Where are you? I came home and you're not here. I know I've made mistakes, but it's not what you think. And finally at 9:00 a.m. Mama, my lawyer says you filed for divorce. Why would you do this without talking to me first? This isn't like you. I almost laughed. This isn't like you. Daniel had grown so used to my compliance, my willingness to swallow his excuses, that my defiance was unthinkable to him. Over breakfast, Stephanie read his messages and scoffed. He really thought you'd confront him directly, let him spin some story you'd accept because the truth was too painful. I nodded, the weight of years lifting slightly. That was the pattern. I believed his lies because the alternative hurt too much, not anymore. Nick called again with urgent news. Rebecca, our investigator confirmed Daniel withdrew $50,000 in cash yesterday afternoon, after receiving the legal notices. He also booked a private charter flight from Seattle to Vancouver for 2 p.m. today. My heart raced. He's running. It appears so, Nick said. We've updated the financial restraining orders to prohibit international travel, but enforcement is tricky on short notice. What about Vanessa? I asked. Her assistant says she called in sick today, first time in 3 years. Her phone shows she's at her apartment, but she's been calling airlines. The pieces clicked together. Daniel and Vanessa were planning to flee, likely to an offshore haven where hidden assets waited. The confrontation I'd planned for tomorrow was coming today. Nick, notify the San Juan Island police about the injunction, I said. If Daniel tries to access the property, they need to enforce the court order. Then I called Roy. Roy, it's Rebecca Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell won't be coming this weekend after all. He sounded surprised. That's odd. He just called, asked me to prep the boat for a noon departure, said it was an emergency. The boat, I'd forgotten about the 38-foot cabin cruiser Daniel bought last summer, supposedly for client entertaining. It could easily reach Canadian waters. Where's it docked? I asked. I'd asked. Mitchell's Bay Marina. Slip 22, Roy replied. I thanked him and relayed the information to Nick, who promised to alert the Coast Guard and Border Patrol. But I knew bureaucracy moved slowly, too slowly to stop Daniel from slipping away with who knew how much of our assets. We need to get to the marina, I told Stephanie, grabbing my jacket. What's the plan? She asked, following me to the car. I'm not sure, I admitted, but I can't sit here while Daniel sails off with my future. We reached Mitchell's Bay Marina in under 10 minutes. Daniel's Tesla was already in the lot. He'd bypassed our Lake Washington house, likely going straight from his office to the ferry. We parked a few spaces away and crept toward the docks, staying hidden behind the harbor master's office. From there, we could see the Slip 22 where the New Horizons gleamed, ready for departure. Daniel moved briskly on deck, stowing gear and checking systems, while Vanessa stood on the dock beside 6 large suitcases and duffel bags, her posture tense but resolute. The salty breeze off Mitchell's Bay carried a chill that matched the tension in the air. Stephanie's whispers sliced through the quiet. Bags. They're not packing for a weekend trip. They're bolting. Her voice trembled with a mix of disbelief and adrenaline. Her eyes locked on the scene unfolding at the marina. I nodded, my heart pounding as I steadied my phone, snapping photos of Daniel and Vanessa's hurried movements. Each click felt like a small act of defiance, a way to anchor the chaos of betrayal into something tangible. I sent the images to Nick with a terse message. Evidence of flight attempt at Mitchell's Bay Marina. Authorities needed ASAP. My fingers shook slightly, not from the paranda, but from the weight of what we were witnessing. My life unraveling in real time. From our hidden vantage point behind a stack of weathered crates, we watched Daniel hoist bags onto the yacht. His movements sharp and frantic. Vanessa followed, her usual grace replaced by a jittery urgency. Their body language screamed fear, shoulders hunched, glances darting toward the horizon as if it might swallow them whole. They weren't the polished, confident couple I'd known. They were scared, and scared people were sloppy. That gave us an edge. We need to stall them, I murmured, my voice low but steady. The Coast Guard won't make it in time. Stephanie's eyes flicked to mine, a silent agreement passing between us. Just then my phone buzzed, Nick's name flashing on the screen. Rebecca, where exactly are you? His voice was taut, urgent, the kind of tone that told me he was already moving, already planning. Watching them load the boat, I replied, keeping my voice hushed. They're about to leave. Sheriff's on his way from Friday Harbor. ETA 15 minutes, best case. Too long, I said, my stomach twisting. They'll be gone in 5. I ended the call, my mind racing. Turning to Stephanie, I said, I need a distraction, something to delay them without tipping them off. Her eyes lit up with a spark of mischief, and after a moment's thought, she grinned. Give me 2 minutes. She slipped away toward the harbor master's office, her steps quick and purposeful. I stayed put, my phone still capturing every move Daniel and Vanessa made. They'd finished loading the bags and were moving hunched over navigational charts spread across the cockpit table. Daniel's finger jabbed toward the north, likely plotting a course to Canadian waters, a desperate bid for escape. The sight of him so methodical in his betrayal, sent a fresh wave of anger through me, tinged with a strange, hollow sadness. How had it come to this? Suddenly, the marina's public address system crackled to life, shattering the tense quiet. Attention all vessels in Mitchell's Bay Marina. This is an emergency notification. Border Patrol and Coast Guard are conducting safety inspections of all departing craft today. Please have documentation ready for inspection before leaving the marina. Repeat, this is a mandatory inspection. The voice was calm but authoritative, and its effect on Daniel and Vanessa was electric. They froze, their heads snapping toward each other, panic flashing in their eyes. Daniel scrambled to fold the charts, his hands fumbling, while Vanessa darted below